What up, simps? I am currently working on my new main series video, I guess, whatever you want to call it, all about Lies of P and how great it is. But in the interim of me working on that and also trying to beat New Game Plus, Separate Ways, the DLC for the Resident Evil 4 remake came out, and I just beat it yesterday. So I've kind of gathered some thoughts and feelings about Resident Evil 4 Separate Ways that I wanted to talk about with you all right now. Let's get this right out of the way. Am I disappointed that it wasn't included with the game? Kind of, but I understand that, companies nowadays in this economy, always trying to just nickel and dime you until the grave. I understand why they made it a DLC, and I mean, to be fair, it's significantly longer than I kind of assumed it would be. So, while I am slightly disappointed that it wasn't just included with the game because I understand why, I also understand that for how long this expansion is, it makes sense to make it a DLC. So with that out of the way, what did I think of it? I genuinely really liked it. I will say first and foremost that I think it took me a little bit longer than most people, and that's simply just because that I got soft locked on 2, potentially 3 separate occasions. The DLC doesn't really explain to you that you need to buy certain items. You don't need to buy a different pistol. You get the Red 9 as an option and the Punisher as an option, but for instance, they give you the option of getting a sniper rifle very early on in the DLC. And I kind of didn't get it for a multitude of reasons, but I personally am just not really a super big fan of the sniper rifle in the main campaign or even in the original Resident Evil 4. I kind of have it always on backup because there are instances where it's definitely useful and it's good to have it. But the El Gigante fight in particular was the first roadblock that I encountered, and I was stuck on this fight for probably 2 hours. Like, coming off of Lies of P, it wasn't like that unusual to be stuck on a boss, or at least it didn't feel that way. But for a Resident Evil game, it was a unique experience. I should also clarify that I played the entire DLC on hardcore, as that's what I did for the base game. And this genuinely felt significantly more difficult than the base game, which I'm not complaining about. I don't mind the boost and challenge. I just wish that, because the 2 out of the 3 times that I was like soft locked on, let's just say, were boss encounters. And in the original game, in the base game of Resident Evil 4 Remake, it felt to me that whatever you had equipped, the game would supply supplies to you. So if you had a shotgun, a pistol, and a sniper rifle in your attaché case, the game would give you pistol, sniper rifle, and shotgun ammo. They would give you that ammo pretty frequently, and there would usually be a way that you could get ammo back consistently during a boss fight to make sure that you at least had some form of ammunition to expend upon the boss. The El Gigante fight, at least from what I could tell in my 2 hours or so of trying to beat it, did not do that. It kind of wanders around this big arena and blows up a bunch of houses, and the houses will supply supplies to you, strangely enough. And there was definitely a point where the houses were all smashed and no more supplies were given to you. But for instance, I didn't have the sniper rifle, but one house in particular was like programmed to supply sniper shells. So until I kind of sort of gave in and bought the sniper rifle, there was a extended period of time where I had nothing to fight this thing with, and all of my knives were broken. So I essentially, in that sense, was completely soft-locked. This happened less so with the second boss that I encountered, which is just Sadler. Ada fights Sadler at the end of the DLC. But the second time in particular was kind of a unique thing. It's on the way to Sadler. It's like this long, just like mob of enemies through this like mild, I want to call it arena puzzle, where you have to like take out like these like machine gunners and then kind of like rearrange some laser lines. That was literally just a skill issue. That's on me. But apart from those 3 instances, I have to say that If you haven't bought this DLC already, I definitely think that you should if you already owned the game and can spare the $10. Because, at least on my end, I got about 6.5 hours of content out of it. I had a wonderful time. And what's great about this DLC in particular, which has been said plenty of times enough already, but just something I really appreciated, was that even though they took some things out of the original GameCube release, like the laser room and the tram car, which were two very specific things that I was sad to not see in the original remake, practically everything that was cut from the original game in some form or fashion has made its way into the remake. The only thing that is just blatantly missing, at least from what I can remember, there's a boss in the original game where you have to like go between these like crates, and this boss is chasing you throughout these like crates, and you have to like drop them into this cavern, and then you fight the boss that has been chasing you after you drop all of them. In this DLC, you only fight the boss. You don't kind of go through that really tense encounter leading up until the boss fight. But you can argue they make up for that by simply just adding on to the boss fight. There's a whole second section that is just not in the original game. That's pretty much the only thing offhand that I can think of that is just flat out not in this DLC. But I think the strongest reason to play through this DLC, beyond anything, is just to remind yourself how good this game is. Like, unironically, playing through this DLC, I was like, yeah, this remake really is a Game of the Year contender. The combat loop that the remake honestly sort of perfected from the original game with the parry system, coupled with these new features in the DLC of like Ada's grappling hook, and that you can even upgrade to the point where you can like remove enemy shields, which is just awesome. Even because in the original game and in the remake, you were sort of limited to wooden shields that you can kind of like shoot away from. You could blow the shield away and then get to the dude behind the shield. There are shielded enemies with like metal shields that you can just shoot your grapple hook into, pull them away, leave them completely defenseless, and then just kick him in the fucking face. It's awesome. The DLC doesn't really add much in terms of an emphasis on like puzzles or anything, but they do provide some sort of like break in the action. There's like a frequent thing that comes up towards the later half of the DLC where there's like these keypads, and Ada has like this iris ability thing that she can use to like look at like imprints, like fingerprints or footprints in a specific room. It's not something that you can activate, it's something that the game tells you like, hey, you can use this now. Towards the later half of the DLC where there's like these keypads, and you have to use the eye that showcase the numbers that are used. It's usually a 3-digit combination that opens up this door, but you have to kind of like look and see which fingerprint is most and least pressed, and that kind of tells you the first and the last numbers, and then you kind of have to just put the one that isn't those in the middle, and you're kind of good. That's about the extent of the puzzles in this game, or at least in this DLC. They don't really expand on the concept of puzzles, but the fact that they are here in some form or fashion is at least nice. It's nice to know that Capcom hasn't forgotten again that Resident Evil, in my opinion, works best when it's paired with tense combat and head-scratching puzzles in some form or fashion. So in that sense, I think the DLC succeeds in flying colors. Is it better than the base game? No. Is it better than the original Separate Ways? By a nautical mile. I've played through the original Separate Ways, I think twice, and it's cool. It's nice to see kind of like all these cutscenes from like different angles, but I think that the DLC and the remake, this version of Separate Ways, I think it just gives all of these extra things to the concept of the original version. Like I mentioned previously, there's a bunch of locations that weren't in the base game that are now in this. So the DLC version of this campaign actually gives a separate look, a different outlook, and different mechanics and different levels and different areas, which really distinguish it from not only the base game, but especially from the original. And I think for $10, you cannot go wrong. If you own the game already, you practically have no excuse. I know money's tight, so in that sense, you know, if you can't spare the $10, I feel for you, but, you know, just be aware that you are not missing out on something game-changing. It's not something that is necessary, but it is a good time. Especially because of the fact that, like, I think the Mercenaries gets Ada and Wesker for free anyway, so at the very least, you have that to mess around with. I don't remember how the original ended, to be honest, but I've heard theories online that the DLC ending alludes to a Code Veronica remake. I can see the reasoning behind people believing that. I would love a Code Veronica remake. Code Veronica and 3 are the only ones of the classic games I have not beaten. I never beat Code Veronica because I got practically hard locked in the airplane, and I never beat 3 because the opening for 3 is just miserable. But I really, up until the airplane, Code Veronica is fantastic, and if this game does allude to Capcom remaking Code Veronica, that's fine with me. Out of any game in the Resident Evil catalog that needs a remake, more than any of them, it's Code Veronica. It's arguably the most important game, story-wise, in the entire franchise. Kind of links both of the trilogies right next to each other. It's the missing link of both the trilogies of Resident Evil, 1, 2, and 3, and 4, 5, 6. But no more after that. So, for completionists, you obviously owe it to yourself to play through this campaign, but I think Capcom nailed it right out of the park. I don't think there's any way that they could have done this Separate Ways DLC better than this. So those are my thoughts and feelings on the Resident Evil 4 Separate Ways DLC. Thanks for watching. I'll see you very soon. Liza P video coming hopefully next week, but if not, very, very soon afterwards. It will be done by the end of the month, I promise. I'll see you then. Thanks for watching. Love your face. Love your show.